Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to me, your host, Christian Watson. So, everybody, Clarence Thomas is probably a name you have seen pop up in the political discourse over the past few weeks, especially in the wake of the Dobbs ruling, which struck down Roe v. Wade, the legal monstrosity which read into the Constitution a right that did not at all exist. And you've probably also heard his name spoken a little bit more recently in the wake of the Highland Park shooting, in which the killer, whose name I will not say, but I did do an entire video about the killer and his connection to nihilism, and I would really encourage you to watch that video if you want to understand what really is going on in regards to American political society. But you may have heard him referenced in terms of a ruling he made in 2013 alongside his then colleague, Antonio Scalia, in which he dissented in the Supreme Court opinion which upheld an assault weapons ban in Highland Park. Indeed, Highland Park actually has quite strict gun control laws, which many people have been asking, then how did those gun control laws not actually stop the killing? And so, but anyway, Clarence Thomas dissented in a Supreme Court ruling which upheld that gun control law by forcefully sticking to the letter of the Constitution, to the letter of the Second Amendment, and also to the constitutional ethos that every human being, by virtue of their humanity, has the right to defend themselves. And this is what Clarence Thomas stood upon. Now, of course, the media took his decision, and then subsequently used his decision to deride him and essentially suggest that he played a role in some way, shape, or form into the carnage perpetuated by the killer. That was essentially the implication. They didn't explicitly say that, but that's the implication. Why else would you mention Clarence Thomas's ruling on a gun case in the particular area a shooting happened right after the shooting happened, unless you're trying to draw some sort of implication? It makes no sense to me. But more recently, a MoveOn.org petition got 1 million signatures calling to impeach Clarence Thomas from his perch at the top of the Supreme Court. And this has been widely panned in the media, and this has been called by many people a necessary step to ensure that the court's integrity is maintained and the legitimacy of the court, that's the word we've been seeing a lot, is also restored. I'll read from the petition itself. The petition says, why is it important to impeach Clarence Thomas? They go on to say, the right-wing rigged Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last week, effectively taking away the right to privacy and bodily autonomy that's been considered legal precedent for the past 50 years. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who sided with the majority on overturning Roe, made it clear what's next: to overturn the high court rulings that establish gay rights and contraception rights. Okay, this is the basis of MoveOn.org's critique of Clarence Thomas, and I will get into why this is absolute gobbledygook nonsense and the sort of system of thought from which these ideas flow. But let us first address the nature of MoveOn.org, because they have actually done quite a lot of things over the years. They have been perhaps one of the most eminent and successful petition-creating organizations in the political conversation, so it's worth addressing them. MoveOn.org makes no pretense to their partiality. Indeed, they claim proudly to be a progressive organization fighting for progressive causes. So MoveOn.org's idea is to weaponize petitions to drive forth their narrow, and in my opinion, principally wrong agenda, because the tenets of progressivism are absolutely principally wrong. Now, when you think of a petition, people typically think of people in a society, a free society, being given the ability to speak against power and to correct power and to correct their own government. And so petitions tend to be seen favorably. And MoveOn.org uses that favorable opinion about petitions to drive home their inherent political goal. But in all reality, what MoveOn.org is doing, it's using something that is seen favorably to advance unproductive and very narrow ends. So I like to liken this to a metaphor. Lakes form what are called oxbow lakes. The meander of a lake, when it's at a point where it is eroding a particular part of land, eventually there is a part of the lake that is cut off from the main lake. and it's like it's a part of the river rather. It's cut off from the main lake, and that entire part is self-contained. And so oxbow lakes are these bodies of water that are boxed in by the land, where nothing can go in or out. It's just stuck there, and they oftentimes turn into swamps. They oftentimes turn into bogs or other instances of decaying life where no productive activity can take place, no cultivation can take place. Well, if you get a fish in an oxbow lake, that fish, by definition, cannot talk to any of the other fish or cannot communicate with any of the other fish in the main river, because the river has moved way beyond the oxbow lake, and the oxbow lake is cut off from the river. Think of our current political society like this. MoveOn.org is like the fish in the oxbow lake. What it is doing is it's talking to other fishes that think and believe like it does, and its voice is loud enough to cause disturbance in the main river. But the thing is, if the main river is disrupted or destroyed, the oxbow lake is okay because they're not connected to the river. MoveOn.org is using petitions to advance an aim that may very negatively impact America's institutions, but they're not concerned about it because in their own narrow world, they don't have those considerations. That's not a consideration for them. They believe that injustice is endemic to American political society, which is why they are advancing the idea that abortion is a right, that contraception is a right, and that group rights, collective rights, are rights. I've explained in previous videos why none of these things are true, my friends. Collective rights do not exist because collectives are composed of individuals, and individuals are the only entities in this world that actually have rights. So to understand rights, you must understand them as rooted in the individual, and to go up on that, just to make that point more exponentially clear, you have to understand individual rights, you have to understand the context in which individuals are placed. Individuals are placed in the context of reality, and reality has a governing order to it. We have the laws of gravitation, we have all other kind of laws, but there's also laws that limit what man can do. And man, in a desire to preserve his life and to also preserve civilization, which has allowed him to bring out his skills and magnify them in such a way that is alien to every other creature on this planet, man, in an effort to observe all that kind of stuff, has to understand his limitations. This is where morality comes in. This is where rights come in. Rights are things that allow us to behave morally responsibly, in a morally responsible way in society, and they are also qualities that belong to us. They don't belong to groups. And the Constitution affirms this idea of rights. And it is the job of a Supreme Court justice to affirm not only the letter of the Constitution, but also to affirm the moral order undergirding the Constitution, which happens to be the moral order of the universe. But again, none of those considerations come into play because their goal is to simply push their narrow idea of reality as opposed to confronting reality itself. MoveOn.org, you should be absolutely ashamed of yourself for not actually confronting reality for what it is, for not actually understanding the technicalities of the Constitution, for not understanding the moral DNA of the Constitution, and instead trying to impose your Gnostic idea of what the world is, your Gnostic idea of what society is, upon the rest of us. That is what progressives have been doing since the progressive era in the 1900s. This is what Woodrow Wilson did. This is what Theodore Roosevelt did. They have been using the state as machinery to force their ends, force their aims, force their goals down the throats of everybody in society, and to forcefully conform every ounce of human activity, especially in economics, to conform to their incorrect ideas of what justice is. Progressivism, at its very roots, is a revolt against reality. And MoveOn.org is merely a microcosm of that broader revolt against reality. So the nature of organizations like MoveOn.org is already conceptually corrupt. Now, we still have to deal with their claims, though, because their claims can have implications in reality, even if their own foundations are a revolt against reality. Now, the claim is that Clarence Thomas's ideas will do all of this kind of stuff, therefore he's bad. But my friends, an understanding of our constitutional moral order and the Constitution's understanding of rights based in nature and an understanding of the ethical system which underlies both of those things would quickly dispel of this opinion in this context. My friends, a mind that says X thing will happen, therefore Y proposition is correct, is a mind that has no grasp of morality. It is a mind that only has a grasp on utility. Now, utilitarianism, this idea that the greatest good that comes from an action that benefits the most people is inherently a good action, whether that's in the form of a rule or that's in the form of just the consequence itself, this idea has been quite popular throughout ethics, and it is fundamentally the idea that undergirds MoveOn.org's critique of Clarence Thomas. When one says, well, Clarence Thomas actually dissented from the assault weapons ban, and that therefore causes, or that therefore had a role in causing in some way, shape, or form the carnage that happened in Highland Park, they are not understanding that things are not right or wrong on the basis of what consequence they have to the majority. Things are right or wrong in themselves by virtue of their nature. Murder does not become right because it would benefit the people in society to have someone murdered. By this logic, you could have justified Socrates' death because the majority of society saw him as a threat, when in all reality, he was simply asking them to correct their premises, to correct their propositions, and to live in accordance with the truth. And that got him killed. Any great man throughout history faces the same scorn on the basis of utility. Utility is an unstable idea because the perceptions and beliefs of people change in every single era, every single age, every single season. Morality, for it to make any sense in practicality to your life, has to have some consistency. The Constitution's idea of natural law, which Clarence Thomas clings to, absolutely has a consistency because it says these principles are true. They are evident, regardless of how you feel or how I feel. And yet, they say, well, this will take away abortion rights, without actually considering, A, is having an abortion a right? And to answer that question, you have to understand the nature of rights as qualities belonging to people, not conferred by a government, but preserved by government. So then that would be categorically, no, it's not a right. And then B, is the question here about actually attacking what you call rights, or is it about correcting and maintaining the proper extent of government by the Constitution? Clarence Thomas's critiques of gay marriage and contraception or whatever that he wrote in the Dobbs in his Dobbs essay is not a moral statement about gay marriage. It's not a moral statement about anything. It is rather a legal statement about how the Constitution, in his view, has been used to justify what the Constitution does not, in fact, justify. Let me say this, though. I do not want to live in a society where I cannot get married to the person I love. I believe that the freedom of association, which is endemic to my natural right of liberty, necessitates that I can do that. But I also understand that that right, that inherent right, is not given to me by a judge. It's not given to me by a bureaucrat. It is given to me by my very design and creation as a luminous, rational human being. But the problem is, progressives decided to use the Supreme Court to extend the Constitution to advance their social engineering goals, which then put every so-called right that they fought for at the mercy of whatever jurist, judge, or jurisprudence holder that came into contact and in power with the court, and consequently came into power in Congress, consequently came into power of the presidency. When you have government granting rights, the government can take the rights. When you have courts granting rights, the courts can take the rights away. So once again, is it really a right if you have to fight for it in the courts, if the courts gave it to you? Or is it this sort of pseudo, false, illusory right that has that idea because people don't understand what rights actually mean, given legal legitimacy? That's what it is. It is an illusory right that is only called a right Because it has legal legitimacy. And this is the great confusion of utilitarianism. It doesn't consider first principles. It doesn't consider the nature of things, the nature of the Constitution, the nature of rights. It simply considers how it makes people in a temporal space and time feel. That's what utilitarianism does, and that's why it is a fundamentally unproductive ethical system. And that's why MoveOn.org and these progressives that are trying to boot Clarence Thomas off on the grounds of utility, on the grounds of consequentialism. They don't understand foundations, don't understand how things are supposed to work, nature. That's why their critiques, when they are examined philosophically, fall apart like that. My friends, Clarence Thomas is a custodian. I don't agree with him on everything, but he is perhaps the best Supreme Court justice we have. And I say that statement, and I qualify that statement, and I justify that statement because Clarence Thomas understands the nature of the Constitution, he understands how the machine is supposed to work, and he is not willing to continue to extend the machine beyond its proper functions, which could lead to the destruction of the machine and the creation of this different monstrous versions of the machine that could violate the very rights the Constitution was born and conceived to protect. Again, I don't agree with him on everything. But I understand that matters of law, matters of constitutional right, have absolutely nothing to do with consequences and everything to do with A, original intent, and B, the principles of reality captured by that original intent. That is why Clarence Thomas will endure. That is why Clarence Thomas must endure, and that is why I am happy to provide a defense of him against the Gnostic progressives that seek to use our institutions in a way they were never meant and never legitimately intended to be used. That is the real threat. And that kind of behavior is what truly must be impeached for this republic to persist. That kind of behavior is what truly must be impeached to ensure that our institutions do not go off the guardrails. That is the kind of behavior that must be soundly impeached, indicted, and condemned by every single citizen who understands their birthright as an American, to ensure that birthright remains true, remains strong. It's come under a lot of assault. Let's not aid and abet another one by ignoring the intellectual corruption of these points. Clarence Thomas, thank you, sir. Thank you for your service. Thank you for continuing to do what is necessary to preserve the natural rights of everybody, regardless of what they believe, regardless of their sexual orientation, regardless. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My friends, think on it. I love you guys so much. If you love me, please go to Patreon, patreon.com/PhilCWatson, or PayPal official cwatch@gmail.com. Please be sure to like this video, to subscribe to this channel, to share this video, to comment on this video. This message is dynamite, my friends. I love you guys so much, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.